Throughout the research I conducted, I knew I had developed a better understanding of what my product will be and how it will be made. I also knew from previous experience with research and concepting that planning out work and finding balance between writing and creating would help immensely with being able to deal with the workflow. So what did I do? I started to create my advert by planning and eventually filming the background scenes, so I could have something to determine what the animation would look like. I used the research on filming to plan where I'd film, what shot I would take, and how long it would be. When I went out to film, I found that all my potential restraints like weather and crowds of people ruining the filming were not a concern, as everything went smoothly. While it wasn't a problem this time, planning ahead is essential for projects like this in case any problems which can ruin or affect the end result of the project. After editing the footage to create my foundation for my animation, I then created the animatic, which would plan out the animation. As I had already researched into the character designs, drawing out the scenes ended up being far easier than I expected. When creating the animatic, I decided to replace what would be a series of rather jumpy still images with rough animation. While it took longer to make, it also saved a lot of time for the animation process. While this did work with some scenes, others featured character animation that needed that extra planning of the animatic. In the future, while time will still be an issue, it would be far better if the animatic had the planning before any rough animation was done to it. I then started on the actual animation, which would make up the bulk of my time spent on the project. As I had used the program Animate for a while now, I had experienced enough to create this animation on my own, without any extra help from tutorials. One specific part of the animation which I found to be quite meaningful is the ending scene with the butterfly. I found myself becoming quite anxious when starting this scene, thinking that I couldn't do it and doubting myself. While many people in the situation would not do it and move on, I carried on making it, and the scene ended up looking far better than expected. As this scenario will definitely happen again in the future, I shall need to teach myself to push and overcome any feelings of anxiety I get around my work. Finally, I started on the editing, which I specifically planned to not take long. When editing the footage at the start of the project, I had basically adjusted all the lighting levels to perfection, so all I needed to do was Alt key the animation into the project and export it in its entirety. The way I made my animation was I planned to green screen the Animate project, place it over the live action footage, and then make the background transparent so that the effect of the animation over the live action is achieved. While this is quicker and can reduce the stress of a deadline, if one mistake is made during the animation, then it can ruin the entire video, and even more time is needed to re-export the fixed Animate file. So what did I learn and how was I challenged? Throughout this production process, I learned about the importance of planning, as the extra insurance against anything potentially going wrong makes mistakes and unavoidable errors less of a problem. I can surely use this skill in the future, as the media industry relies on good planning for even the most smallest projects, especially freelance work. While I found myself sometimes going against the plan set out for me due to unpredicted time or unavoidable situations, which affected anxieties I had about time and skill, I tried my hardest to keep going forward in my development of these skills. Another important skill I learnt was not a monumental change, but was a step in the right direction to becoming more confident in my animation skills. While the pressure I was putting on myself was intense, pushing past the anxiety of creating my final scene really helped put my attitudes to my work in perspective, and, while I had not mastered it by a long shot, ignoring it and continuing forward will help in the future, where a steady income is dependent on my confidence in my work.